Blood drenched the streets and screams tore through the smoky air as sentient carnivorous plants rampaged through the slums of Zephyr City. Ethan Wilson ducked into a dark alley, heart pounding, his grimy ex-military fatigues soaked with sweat. A frantic ping lit up his wristcom. It was Mizar, his Yadaran friend. "Ethan, IEC infrastructure across the colony is under coordinated attack. Power plants, factories, transport hubs, all sabotaged. Security is overwhelmed. No one knows who's behind it." Ethan swore. As a freelance tech specialist barely scraping by in the sprawling shanties, he had no love for the Interstellar Extraction Corporation that controlled Nexus Prime, exploiting the native Yadarans and unique flora for profit. But this scale of disruption meant bad news for everyone. "There's more," Mizar said, his voice shaking. "I've discovered something at the bio-research facility where I work. The attacks, they're being carried out by the Voraks. Those sentient carnivorous plants IEC has been secretly studying and exploiting, trying to turn into weapons. But the Voraks, they've grown intelligent, and now they're fighting back against their captors." Dread settled in Ethan's gut like a lead weight. As news of the Voraks uprising spread, panic gripped the colony. IEC initiated an emergency evacuation, but only for their own people and the wealthy elite. The rest of the humans and Yadarans were abandoned, left behind as expendable. Riots erupted as the desperate masses turned on each other. Zephyr City descended into violent anarchy, but amid the chaos and bloodshed, Ethan saw an opportunity, a chance for the downtrodden, the outcasts, the have-nots, to rise up and forge their own destiny, to become the carnivorous humans who would stand and fight for the colony's future when no one else would. He began rallying others from the slums to his cause. Fellow vets, mercs, misfits with nothing left to lose. With Mizar as their guide, they prepared to take on the Voraks threat, the IEC, and the mayhem consuming their world. The odds were stacked against them. But Ethan had a feeling these carnivorous humans might just be the key to Nexus Prime survival, if they could stay alive long enough. In the dimly lit confines of the abandoned warehouse, Ethan surveyed the ragtag group of survivors who had rallied to his cause. Lena, a wiry woman with a shock of red hair and a perpetual scowl, tended to the wounded with brusque efficiency. Kai, his face pale and drawn, hunched over a flickering computer screen, his fingers flying across the keys despite the blood-soaked bandage wrapped around his torso. Mizar paced the length of the room, his scales glinting in the faint light filtering through the dusty windows. "The Voraks are not mindless beasts," he said, his voice tight with urgency. "They have a complex society, a shared consciousness. If we can understand their motivations, find a way to communicate." Ethan nodded, his expression resolute. The intel they'd gathered from the IEC facility painted a grim picture of the corporation's crimes against the sentient plants. Genetic modifications, neural implants, torture disguised as science. It was no wonder the Voraks had risen up in violent rebellion. But the cost of that rebellion was mounting by the day. The streets of Zephyr City echoed with the sounds of gunfire and screams, as desperate survivors turned on each other and IEC's mercenaries cracked down with ruthless force. "We need to split up," Ethan said, his voice cutting through the tense silence. "Mizar and Lena, you're with me. We'll head into the wilderness, try to find this sacred site Mizar talked about. If we can make contact with the Voraks hive mind, maybe we can find a way to end this without more bloodshed." Lena snorted, her eyes hard. "And what if they don't want to talk? What if they just want to rip us apart like they did to those poor bastards in the slums?" "Then we do what we have to do," Ethan said grimly. "But we have to try. Otherwise, this whole planet is going to burn." He turned to Kai, who looked up from his computer screen with a wan smile. "You stay here. Keep an eye on things in the city. Rally as many people as you can to our cause. We're going to need all the help we can get." Kai nodded, his eyes glinting with persistence. "I'll do my best. Just come back in one piece, okay?" Ethan clasped his friend's shoulder, a silent promise passing between them. Then he turned to the others, his gaze sweeping over their hardened, desperate faces. "Get some rest," he said. "We move out at dawn." As the group dispersed, Ethan caught Mizar's eye. The Yadarin's expression was unreadable, but Ethan could sense the weight of responsibility that hung over them both. They were the bridge between two worlds, two species locked in a deadly struggle for survival. And the fate of Nexus Prime rested on their shoulders. The journey ahead would be perilous, a trek through uncharted wilderness, with danger lurking at every turn. But Ethan knew they had no choice. The carnivorous humans, the outcasts and misfits, were the only ones who could forge a path to peace, or die trying. As the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, Ethan shouldered his pack and stepped out into the ruined streets of Zephyr City. Lena and Mizar fell into step beside him, their faces grim with persistence. Together, they set out to confront the Voracks and the secrets that lay hidden in the alien wilds of Nexus Prime. The fate of two species hung in the balance, and the carnivorous humans were the only hope for a future beyond the chaos and bloodshed. The alien wilderness of Nexus Prime unfolded before Ethan, Lena, and Mizar as they led their small team of carnivorous humans into uncharted territory. Bioluminescent plants cast an eerie glow across the dense forest floor, painting shadows that danced and shifted with each step. Mizar consulted the ancient Yadarin star charts, his scaled fingers tracing constellations etched on weathered parchment. "We're on the right path," he whispered, eyes darting nervously. "The sacred site lies beyond the acid flats." Lena grimaced, adjusting her pack. "Lovely. Any other deadly obstacles we should know about?" As if in answer, a distant screech echoed through the trees. The team froze, hands instinctively reaching for weapons. "Voracks," Ethan breathed, scanning the surroundings. "Everyone stay alert." They pressed on, wading through knee-deep swamps of bubbling acid. The caustic fumes burned their eyes and throats, but the grit to reach their goal drove them forward. On the third day, they witnessed the true power of the Voracks. A massive plant creature, easily the size of a small building, uprooted itself and lumbered past their hiding spot. Its vines writhed with purpose, reshaping its form to navigate the terrain. "Incredible," Mizar murmured, his scientific curiosity momentarily overriding his fear. As they neared the coordinates of the sacred site, the air grew thick with tension. Ethan sensed something was off, the hairs on the back of his neck standing up. A twig snapped. "Down!" Ethan roared, tackling Lena as gunfire erupted around them. Black-clad figures melted out of the shadows, IEC's Blackwatch elite. At their head strode a towering woman with a face like chiseled granite. "Commander Thorn," Lena spat, recognizing the infamous leader. "Surrender now," Thorn's voice rang out, cold and hard as steel. "And your deaths will be quick." Ethan's team scrambled for cover, returning fire. The air filled with the acrid smell of plasma rounds and burning foliage. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and rapidly running out of options. A plasma bolt caught Lena in the side. She crumpled with a strangled cry. "No!" Ethan dragged her behind a fallen log, hands slick with her blood. Time seemed to slow as Ethan saw his team faltering. He stood, plasma rifle raised, ready to make his final stand. The ground trembled. A colossal shape burst from the undergrowth, a Vorax larger than any they'd seen. Its vines lashed out with terrifying speed and precision, impaling Blackwatch soldiers and ripping through their advanced armor easily. Commander Thorn's eyes widened in shock before a massive tendril swept her away, her scream cut short. In mere moments, the clearing fell silent, save for the rustling of leaves and the groans of the wounded. The Vorax turned its sensory stalks toward Ethan, who stood frozen, weapon half raised. A tense moment passed. Then, to everyone's amazement, the creature gently extended a vine, as if in invitation. Mizar stepped forward, his voice filled with awe. "It's communicating. I believe it wants us to follow." Ethan hesitated, then nodded. He scooped up the barely conscious Lena. "Lead the way. Virtus," he said, using the name Mizar had just coined. Virtus guided them through a hidden passage in the dense foliage. As they emerged, gasps of wonder escaped their lips. Before them stood the ruins of an ancient civilization, its crumbling structures overtaken by lush plant life. Intricate carvings adorned weathered stone walls, depicting harmonious scenes of Vorax and humanoid figures working together. "By the stars," Mizar breathed, his eyes wide. "The Vorax! They're not just sentient, they're guardians of this place." Virtus led them deeper into the ruins, to a central chamber that pulsed with an otherworldly energy. At its heart grew a massive, undulating mass of plant-like tissue, the Vorax hive mind. Ethan felt a gentle tendril brush his temple. The world dissolved into a kaleidoscope of images and sensations. He saw the true history of the Vorax, their symbiotic relationship with the planet's original inhabitants, and the brutality of IEC's enslavement. He witnessed the growth of a terrifying bioorganic weapon, born of the Vorax's desperation, a last resort that could obliterate all life on Nexus Prime. As the vision faded, Ethan stumbled, his mind turning. He looked at his team, at Virtus, at the ancient technology surrounding them. Understanding dawned. Here lay the key to ending the conflict, to forging a new future for humans, Yatterans, and Vorax alike. But time was running out. In the distance, they could hear the ominous rumble of IEC dropships. The final battle for Nexus Prime was about to begin. The ancient chamber hummed with energy as Ethan's mind reeled from the Vorax hivemind's vision. He blinked, adjusting to the dim light of the ruins as the connection faded. "We need to interface with this technology," he said, gesturing to the pulsating organic mass. "It's the key to everything." Lena, her wound hastily bandaged, leaned against a crumbling pillar. "And how exactly do we do that? I don't see any user manual lying around." Mizar stepped forward, his scales shimmering in the ethereal glow. "The carvings, they're not just art, they're instructions." His fingers traced the intricate patterns etched into the stone. "If I'm reading this correctly, we need to synchronize our brainwaves with the hive mind." Over the next hours, they deciphered the ancient alien language, piecing together the secrets of the ruins' builders. Ethan felt a growing sense of urgency as the distant rumble of IEC dropships grew louder. Finally, Mizar activated a hidden panel. The chamber filled with a low hum as bioorganic tendrils emerged from the walls, connecting the team to the hive mind. Information flooded Ethan's consciousness. The Vorax's true nature as guardians, the incredible biotechnology at their disposal, and the delicate balance they maintained on Nexus Prime. Through this newfound connection, Ethan communicated directly with the Vorax leaders. Images and emotions flowed between them, conveying more than words ever could. A tentative agreement formed, an equitable sharing of resources, an end to exploitation. As the connection faded, Ethan's comm unit crackled to life. Kai's voice came through, breathless and urgent. "Ethan, we've intercepted IEC transmissions. They have a doomsday weapon, a pathogen engineered to wipe out all Vorax life." Ethan's blood ran cold. "Can you stop it?" "We're mounting a raid now," Kai replied, "but Thorn's retaliating. She's taken hostages in the slums, threatening to execute them if we don't stand down." The ruins shook as explosions rocked the jungle outside. IEC forces were closing in. "We're out of time," Ethan said, turning to his team. "Mizar, can we use this tech to control the Vorax remotely?" The Yatteran nodded, his fingers flying over the ancient controls. "It's possible, but risky. We'd be tapping directly into their neural network." "Do it," Ethan ordered. "Lena, get Kai on the line. We need to coordinate our attack." As Mizar worked, Virtus and other Vorax gathered outside the ruins. Ethan felt the connection form, a surge of power unlike anything he'd experienced. Through Virtus's eyes, he saw IEC's command center. With a thought, tendrils lashed out, disabling equipment and incapacitating soldiers. Across the city, Kai's rebels struck. They fought their way through IEC's defenses, securing the pathogen sample. But victory came at a cost. "The container's damaged," Kai's panicked voice came through the comm. "It's leaking!" Mizar's eyes widened. Without a word, he sprinted from the chamber. "Mizar, wait!" Ethan called, but it was too late. Through the hive mind connection, Ethan witnessed Mizar's final moments. The Yateran seized the leaking container, using his own body to contain the pathogen. He staggered to an incinerator, sealing himself inside. Grief threatened to overwhelm Ethan, but there was no time to mourn. IEC forces breached the outer defenses of the ruins. "Lena, contact the Yateran clans," Ethan said, his voice tight. "Tell them it's time." As if on cue, Yateran ships appeared on the horizon, allied clans answering the call to arms. With the combined might of humans, Yaterans, and Voraks, they launched their final assault on IEC's headquarters. Virtus led the charge, smashing through barricades as if they were made of paper. Inside the facility, chaos reigned. The board of directors scrambled to evacuate, loading crates of stolen wealth onto a waiting shuttle. Ethan and his team fought their way through waves of security forces. As they neared the shuttle bay, a familiar figure blocked their path. Commander Thorne stood before them, her face a mask of fury. "You've ruined everything," she snarled, raising her weapon. But before she could fire, a Vorax tendril wrapped around her, pinning her arms to her sides. Ethan approached, his eyes hard. "It's over, Thorne. You've lost." As they secured the IEC leadership, reports flooded in from across the colony. The fighting was dying down, replaced by an uneasy quiet. Ethan looked out over the scarred landscape of Nexus Prime, the magnitude of what they'd accomplished sinking in. They had won the battle, but the real work was just beginning. He turned to his team, human, Yateran, and Vorax alike. "Let's get to work," he said. "We have a world to rebuild." Rebuild. Months passed, and the euphoria of victory faded into the harsh realities of governing a fractured world. Ethan stood at the window of the Coalition's makeshift headquarters, watching the bustle of activity in the streets below. The sight should have filled him with pride, but a gnawing unease had taken root in his gut. Another incident at the Resource Distribution Center, Kai reported, stepping into the room. Yateran protesters claim they're being shortchanged on medical supplies. Ethan pinched the bridge of his nose. "And let me guess, the human workers insist they're following the agreed-upon ratios?" Kai nodded grimly. "It got ugly. We had to send in peacekeepers." The door burst open, and a towering Vorax squeezed into the already crowded office. Its tendrils gesticulated wildly as it emitted a series of clicks and whistles. "Verda says there's unrest in the agricultural sectors," Mizar translated, trailing behind the agitated plant creature. "Some of the more militant Vorax factions are threatening to withhold the next harvest unless their territory is expanded." Ethan's fist clenched at his side. This wasn't the future they had fought for. The Coalition was supposed to usher in an era of cooperation, not perpetuate the same old conflicts under a new banner. "That's it," he declared, turning to face his team. "We need a more permanent solution. Lena, you and I are going back to the ruins. There has to be something in that ancient tech we missed." Lena's eyes lit up at the prospect. "I'll grab my gear." As they prepared to depart, Ethan pulled Kai aside. "Hold things together here as best you can. We'll be in touch." The journey to the sacred ruins was tense, the jungle path now marred by signs of recent skirmishes. Virtus accompanied them, its massive form providing both protection and a somber reminder of the precarious peace they'd achieved. Inside the ancient chamber, Lena immediately set to work, her fingers dancing across the bioorganic controls with practiced ease. Ethan paced, his mind racing through potential solutions. A sudden gasp from Lena froze him in his tracks. "Ethan, come look at this." He hurried over, peering at the pulsating display. "What am I seeing?" It's an AI, Lena breathed, her eyes wide with wonder. "Dormant all this time, but still functional. The databanks it's connected to, the sheer amount of knowledge." Ethan felt a glimmer of hope. "Can we access it?" Lena nodded, her fingers already flying across the controls. "I think so. Just need to... There." The chamber hummed to life, holographic projections flickering into existence around them. A synthesized voice, ancient yet crystal clear, filled the air. "Greetings, sentience. I am architect, custodian of this facility. How may I assist you?" Ethan and Lena exchanged a look of awe. This was it, the key to unlocking true cooperation between their species. "Architect," Lena began, her voice trembling with excitement, "we need your help. The Vorax, the humans, the Yatarans, we're struggling to coexist. Is there anything in your databanks that could help us bridge the gap?" There was a moment of silence as Architect processed the request. Then, a stream of information flooded the displays. "Fascinating," Lena murmured, her eyes darting over the data. "Ethan, look at this. The Vorax. They weren't always like this. Their original form was much closer to us, able to communicate directly." Ethan frowned. "What happened?" "Environmental adaptation," Architect's voice intoned. "The original inhabitants of this world engineered the Vorax to better survive changing planetary conditions. But it seems the process was never reversed." Lena turned to Ethan, her eyes blazing with purpose. "We can fix this. Using Architect's data, we could rewrite the Vorax's genetic code, bring back their ability to communicate directly with us. It could solve everything." Ethan hesitated, the weight of the decision bearing down on him. "Are you sure about this, Lena? It's a massive step. If we lose the Vorax's trust..." "It's our only shot at real lasting peace," Lena insisted. "We have to try." With a heavy sigh, Ethan nodded. "All right, let's do it." They worked tirelessly, Architect guiding them through the intricate process of genetic reengineering. As the hours turned to days, Ethan's unease grew. Something felt off, but he couldn't put his finger on it. It wasn't until the first test subject emerged from the transformation chamber that Ethan realized the horrible truth. The Vorax before them was changed, yes, but not in the way they had intended. Its vines writhed with unnatural speed, its form twisted into something nightmarish. Before they could react, the mutated Vorax lashed out, its tendrils slicing through the air with deadly precision. Lena screamed as she was struck, her body crumpling to the ground. "No!" Ethan roared, diving for her as Virtus engaged the mutant in battle. Cradling Lena's broken form, Ethan watched in horror as more twisted Vorax began to pour from the chamber. They had made a terrible mistake, and now they would all pay the price.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.